Evening. Here we are. Hello, everyone. I'm a minute or two late. Please drop one in the chat to let me know my audio is coming through and you are all receiving me just fine. Let me just check on YouTube. Yes, looks like we're good. Um, yeah, so just adjust that. So, hello, everyone. Andrew Martin, great to have you. Horse, of course. Yeah, I certainly have fewer technical glitches than I used to have. I'm pretty bad at this stuff. Actually, I'm really bad at this stuff. Dr. Obvious, welcome. Um, let's see. Michelle, I hope yeah, I hope you don't fall asleep because of your cold. But you can always catch up again later. Azuluza, good to see you. Yeah, Owen Benjamin certainly has some fascinating, if not very accurate things to say sometimes. Roseanne, welcome. Sandro, Artsy, Fartsy, of course, Dragon. Thank you, Dragon, for being here. Always good to see you. And let me see, we've got Philip Webb. So welcome, guys. Okay, so thanks all for being here today. We're talking, I think, the second last episode. Connor, welcome, and Ava Lauren, welcome. So today, I think, is the second last episode on this discussion about nominalism, this philosophy of nominalism. The aim was to show that ideas have consequences, and philosophy has consequences, and bad philosophy has bad consequences. So what I do try to do on this channel, as I'm trying to sort of find my voice and find my niche, is that I try to take very complex academic subjects, things which have been impenetrable, impossible for us to understand as regular plebs, and I try to make them understandable, digestible. I try to break them down into simple ideas, simple situations, contexts that we can all understand and see how they impact us within our daily lives, and also from a Christian point of view, how they interact with, how they oppose, or how they harmonize with Christianity. And of course, most of the things that I deal with are contentious. So these are things that stand in opposition to biblical Christianity, to historical Christianity. Susan Fit 47 from South Carolina, welcome. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully I am meeting that goal. Hopefully I'm achieving this goal, that I'm taking complex topics, things which would otherwise be extremely academically dense, and I am merging lots of data, lots of strands, and providing a digestible, an understandable, relatable set of contexts, set of situations that you can understand and go, okay, now I know what this is. And because quite bluntly, as we know, we've had academics baffling us with complete BS. And this is where I'm trying to get away from that. Andrew Martin, thank you for doing this. Yeah, Andrew, I mean, I've known you for some years now. I've seen your comments, and I mean, you're one of the most educated, well-spoken people I know on YouTube. You had me at polemics. Thanks. You know what? Horse. I need to go back to polemics. Some of these talks I've done in the past, I know more now, and I can go back to these, and I can add a bit more detail. And I should go back to polemics also, just to update it. I mean, here and there, but also just to redo it for a new audience. My audience has grown a little bit since I had 2,000 subs. Andrew says these topics really need this treatment. So yeah, I have a lot that I'm working on, and I will be picking up the pace. Although as of the middle of this month, apparently I'm going to be doing tango classes for a few months. So yeah, that's one of my evenings given over to tango. So Michael, I looked into the Black Pope, was behind the scenes in the Vatican, always running everything, and was a Jesuit. That's been over a decade. Yeah, yeah, I need to get into this whole Jesuit thing because I don't know. I'm just so skeptical. Right. Yeah, polemics we can return to. All right, guys, takes two to tango. Yeah. Okay, so guys, let me jump into the topic now that I've done J Park. Welcome. Okay, by the way, so currently I am nearly done with this one. This is Mary Magdalene. You know that I did a series on Mary Magdalene and Jesus, as well as, and along with that, I was talking about an author called Dumb Brown, who wrote a book called The Da Vinci Clown. Oops, let me just go back to that. Yeah, and a book called The Da Vinci Clown. So I did that. Okay, the episode is called Did Jesus Marry? Have a look at that. That discusses the errors, the many errors of Dumb Brown. and the many errors in the book called The Da Vinci Clown, right? And goes through all the conspiracy theories and all of that. So this is a follow-up to that, right? And the reason it's a follow-up to that is because there's something else that I'm working on that requires a deeper look into Mary Magdalene, of course, right? All of these things, it turns out, these are all sort of interrelated or interconnected to some degree, right? So I will be going through Mary Magdalene. I'm nearly done with these. I've just done an in-depth historical analysis today of the city, Magdala, right? The history of the city itself, and I will be working through that. So this is not going to be hugely lengthy. It's 20 something slides, probably going to end up being about 30 slides. Mike Samal, welcome. But when that's done, then we'll be going into some other things, right? So I need to tackle that. That also, I'm building up a library of materials that you can go through and look at, of course, something hopefully definitive. All right, so then now I'm working on Gnosticism, right? So this is historical Gnosticism. I've looked a lot at some of the weirder aspects that are hidden, but now we've got to go back into history. We have to go into Gnosticism and early Christianity, looking at the development of the New Testament canon. Now, for instance, let me show you this slide here. I'll just pick one random slide here. Let me take this away. Right. So this is a timeline that I created. Now, this is built off the work done by Dr. Michael Heiser. I really like Dr. Michael Heiser's work. Obviously, I'm not going to agree with every perspective he has, in the sense that he comes from sort of an evangelical perspective, so leaning towards obviously the whole Lutheran Protestant idea. But that said, the man is brilliant. His work is fantastic, and I'm very sad that he died so young. But yeah, he's a brilliant scholar. So anywho, now understand, these Gnostics claimed they were Christians. They still do. They claim that they are the original Christians. They came early. But notice, there's nothing in the Gnostic canon that we have today, right, prior to the year 250. That is more than 2 centuries after the crucifixion here, right? So just amongst other things, every single book of the New Testament is quoted. Every single book of the New Testament is quoted by other authors, right? Is found in various sources before the first Gnostic gospel was written, right? So for instance, this is Romans, cited by Clement of Rome, right? Polycarp, the Didache, First Corinthians and the Didache, and the Shepherd of Hermas. So what I've done is I've put together, using Dr. Michael Heiser's work, so you can see the New Testament is very early. And this is just one slide, right? I've got multiple slides like this, detailing all of this stuff. So we'll be going through all of this in detail. This is going to be lengthy. Man, I'm already at slide 63, and that's partway into section 3 of this. And I think this is easily going to end up being 200, if not 300 slides. This is going to be an in-depth discussion of the formation of the canon, the early church and its struggles with Gnosticism, and I'm going to be doing at least the Catholic Church versus Gnosticism as a separate discussion. I'll be doing at least 8 heresies this year, right? That's the plan. So hopefully that'll be useful, but I'll be going through a great deal of all of this stuff, okay? So I've got a lot of material. You'd be amazed how many hundreds of pages of material I already have done. Okay, so let us go to where we left off last time, and I'll pick up from there. Right, this is where we left off. Let me close that. So yeah, so let me just catch up with the comments. Actually, his scholarly work is very good. No, Michael Heiser is brilliant. I mean, his work is honestly fantastic. Very sad. I was very sad that he's no longer with us, honestly. National Geo Channel is heavily Freemasonic. There's always sick programs. Yeah, look, I will discuss Freemasons. However, I will start with Napoleon, as I said. Thank you, Mr. Krabs, for subscribing. I need to take this away from the whole conspiracy theory angle. We need to go into the Enlightenment, which was very much an occult movement and very much a Freemasonic movement. But I'm going to start with Napoleon, who understood the Freemasons. He worked with the Freemasons. I don't think he was a Freemason. There's no evidence of that. But he certainly understood their political clout, their networks, and he operated with that. And then from there, we will go into various other organizations and end up with Satanism and Karl Marx as we move towards understanding this topic. I've been ripping into Islam on my TikTok and my language, getting good interaction. Your Sharia videos. Thank you, Mr. Rock. Very good to know. Very, very good to know. Not long ago, everyone was roaming European sites with a Ben Clown book under their armpit to discover the truth. Yeah, So yeah. Yeah, yes, I was able to elucidate. My wife was buying dumb Brown's errors. Thanks, Horse. I'm so glad. I love Dan Brown's books, but Lloyd exposing the nonsense of their foundation is even better. Yeah, I'm going to be tearing into that again. So there's a lot more. There's a lot of tearing into that. I'm going to be taking that apart. I did promise I would get to it a few months ago, and I'm about to get to that. Okay, let's dive in. So, guys, Occam, William of Occam was Martin Luther's dear teacher, right? This is from the Christian Classics, Ethereal Library, History of the Christian Church, Volume 6, The Middle Ages from 1294 to 1517 by Philip Schaff. Philip Schaff is a very famous, very well-known, highly respected Protestant scholar, right? So, Occam's views on the authority of the civil power, papal errancy, the infallibility of the scriptures, and the Eucharist are often compared with the views of Luther. Interesting. So there's a connection here between Martin Luther and William of Ockham. The German reformer spoke of the English schoolman as, without doubt, the leader and the most ingenious of the schoolmen. That would be the scholastics. Scholasticorum doctorum sine dubio princeps et ingeniosimus. Right? So he called him his dear teacher and declared himself to be of Ockham's party. So he was of the party of William of Ockham. Welcome, Winston. Okay. Sum Occamicae factionis. Right, so there you go. So we have this now. There's, through multiple sources, we can discern that Martin Luther was very much in the camp of William of Ockham. The dear leader, exactly, the dear leader. North Korea, anyone? So, Ockham, Luther's dear teacher. Yeah. So William of Ockham lived from 1280 to 1349, an English Franciscan monk, educated at Oxford. Yeah, okay. Although sometimes, given what seems to be going on in academia, I sometimes, oopsie, darn it. Yeah, although given what's going on in academia, I sometimes want to call it Oxford University, but we'll find out. Sometimes I wonder. Okay, now, so he's educated at Oxford, and he embraces this extreme form of nominalism. So he's convinced that the logical method of even the greatest schoolman, meaning Aquinas, meaning Anselm, right, could not provide incontestable proof of religious doctrines. Now, I need to pause there and highlight. If anyone is asking you for incontestable proof, 100% unfalsifiable, totally convincing, they are lying to you. That, you see, what you need is what some people call a moral level of truth. A level of truth that is believable, that is credible, right? Science doesn't claim to have incontrovertible and incontestable proof. And then, of course, you've got the horse's ass on the other end of the argument who does not accept proof as persuasion. No amount of proof is persuasion, right? So it's not up to you. That's throwing the burden on you. They are simply the one being completely obstinate, stubborn. They are the one who's being unreasonable, but they're blaming you for not having sufficient evidence. Now, science doesn't claim to have incontestable, incontrovertible, undeniable, utterly compelling truth. So already that is suspect. That makes my little light go off in my head, the alarm bell go off in my head. Right? So he says, no. Right? The greatest schoolman cannot provide incontestable proof of religious doctrines. He maintained that these must be accepted entirely by faith, by feelings. So, for instance, you must accept it by faith. Like, I have faith that, that there's no Trinity. I have faith, you see. So, prove it. I have no proof. I just have my faith. I believe that I have faith that there is a Trinity, that it's the Trinity. No, I have faith that it's three separate gods. One called Jesus, one called Mary, and one called Jehovah. I have faith. Well, I'm right. How do you prove it? Well, my feelings are better than your feelings. I have better feelings than you. My feelings are greater than yours, but I have deep, burning feelings. What? How do you prove things without a standard using reason? Understand the problem here. Mr. Occam, despite being acclaimed as a genius, was clearly an retarded idiot. Hopefully that makes it clear. Just that simple example tells you how utterly brain dead this man was. The Holy Spirit is on our side. Yeah, no. He's on my side because I feel it. Do you understand? This is not an argument. This is not an argument. This is an assertion where you are trying to get away from having to present evidence and reason and arguments. So he said, no, faith only in revelation. Reason had validity only in the realm of nature. So when you want to count, I don't know, grains of sand or how many legs on a puppy, then it's all good. But other than that, no. So science can tell you how many, your brain can tell you how many legs are on a puppy. 4. But other than that, no, it's all about feelings. And I've got better feelings than you. Your feelings are wrong. My feelings are superior. Do you understand? He's an idiot. Yeah, nost idiot. Right. Actually, as someone wrote in the chat earlier, uh, uh, these people had Gnosticistic personality disorder. That's what Gnosticism gives you. Gnosticistic personality disorder. Yeah, so that's what they had. Gnosticistic personality disorder. Okay, so Martin Luther respects the contributions of Occam and Gabriel Biel, but he obviously disagrees with their views on free will, right? He disagrees on their views of salvation through good works and the process of justification. So, yeah, Nicodemus says science is not an absolute top-down truth. Exactly. Toxic Gnosticistic personality disorder. Exactly. TGPD. My fifis. Exactly, Artsy. It's fifis. Sola fifis. Right? So, I got that from, it's not my term, I got that in the comment section. So, right. So, however, unlike Occam and Biel, Luther believed that Christ's sacrifice was effective regardless of personal actions. You could be the most sinful, horrific person, doing no matter what, but you didn't have to atone. You just needed to have faith, and it's all good, right? Which is not exactly very Christian, but we'll get to that, right? So regardless of your actions, regardless of your worthiness, and regardless of your personal choices, it's okay. Just have faith, and you're good to go. You're going to heaven no matter what you do. So now Luther doubted his own salvation. He was very much in doubt of his own salvation. So he found assurance in his own personal, private interpretation of Scripture. In other words, he was a lazy bastard, just wanted to snap his fingers, say, God, I believe in you, Lord, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yes, it's you, Martin, come to heaven no matter what you did. That's what he wanted. So specifically, Martin Luther, of course, emphasized his own doctrine of justification by faith alone. So this leads Luther to reject the scholastic theological framework. Remember, scholastic theology is a methodology to find truth. It's not a theology, right? And he saw this, right? He saw scholasticism or reason as overly dependent on human reasoning and works. And he emphasized faith and divine grace. In other words, your personal feelings, your personal beliefs. Opinion, in other words. What's the difference between theology or doctrine and opinion within the Lutheran Protestant world? Well, there is no difference. Doctrine is opinion because the guy next to you has his own one, a completely different one. Right, so he believed that reason actually hindered God's work of saving man. Using your brain hindered God's work of being able to save you. So he vehemently attacked the schoolmen, Aristotle, and reason. And this is from Martin Luther, Luther's Works, volume 31, The Career of the Reformer. Right? So that's my source there, and we'll discuss that when I get to my Luther section. So, divine omnipotence, divine sovereignty, let's have a look at that. Occam speculates, can God bring the worst sinner to heaven without changing that person? So Luther actually gets his idea from Occam. So despite what one source may say, Luther was heavily influenced by Occam in certain ways. So Occam says, can you do nothing to change, right? You do zero, you're still the worst sinner imaginable. Can God bring you to heaven? Can that filth come to heaven, to the pure place, right? And you don't have to fulfill any conditions. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to repent. You don't have to cleanse yourself. You don't have to anything. God can just say, yeah, you're coming with me, right? And he says yes. He concludes that yes, God can produce any effect bypassing all conditions, all process of preparation. And this, of course, goes against long-established theology. This goes against tradition. This goes against all expectations that we have of Christian theology and of God. So he says, can God command us to hate each other and to hate him? So can God command humans to hate each other and to hate him? Can God say, hate me, I want you to hate me? And then that would be the new law. And he says, yes, God's will is the law. God's will is what establishes right and wrong. God's will decides what is right and what is not right. Now, for those of you who were with me previously on this discussion a couple of episodes ago, that's Allah. This is Allah. This is divine command theory. This is how Allah operates. This is Muslim. This is 100% Muslim theology. God is logos. God is not will. But here he is saying God is will. Now, he sees God as will, not as logos. This is Abdulism. Exactly. It is 100% Abdulism. This is not even Christian. This is Muslim theology. Understand, this is Chrislam. This is 100% Chrislam. This is not Christian. This is the Muslim view, right? So he reduces God to only will, not wisdom, not goodness, not morality. This is divine command theory at work. O8X says, this is nothing to do with Islam. You are slipping, Lloyd. You're right, sorry, this is nothing to do with Islam. My apologies. Yeah, this has nothing to do with Islam, right? Now, it is absurd for us to think that God would command us to hate him. It violates the perfect nature, the perfect character of God, and it violates the Bible. This is reductionist speculation over good theology. Now, Martin Luther admired Occam, and Luther's break with scholasticism results in Luther following Occam and nominalism. So Luther retains a key premise, right, from Occam, in that the world is not rational, right? The world does not follow intelligible wisdom. It is not coherent. It is not consistent. The world is about will and about power, right? And what did Mao tell us? Power comes from the barrel of a gun, right? Allah is will. Allah is not logos. These are two separate concepts. So the world was naked of goodness. There is no goodness in the world, right? Because he said the will can only produce evil. The will only wants what is evil. The will is steeped in evil. The will cannot think good. So this is the depravity of man that he and Calvin believed in, right? So there's no goodness in the world. You can only rely on Christ to remove you from a corrupt nature. In other words, there's nothing you could do. Jesus did it all. So you may as well kick back, sin as much as you want, do whatever you like. Jesus will come and find you because Jesus wants you to be a sunbeam. And even if you're I don't know, a rapey murderer or something. Now, for us, for Christians, God's commands reflect his moral nature, right? Christians do not believe that God would violate his own laws or commandments, right? And I believe this is Orthodox standard Christian theology. And I don't mean Eastern Orthodox. I just mean regular, bog standard, common or garden style Christian doctrine. Christians do not believe that God would violate his own laws or commandments, right? Thou shalt not murder, right? Thou shalt not steal, right? Would God violate his own commandments, right? So he's a God of order. He's not a God of chaos. The Bible apparently doesn't contradict itself, but Occam and Luther felt otherwise. Evil acts are evil, regardless who commands them, because we think God's nature is good, perfect. So he established moral laws and commandments that reflect God's holy and righteous nature. He is the very opposite of evil. He cannot be evil. So to bypass those would go against his perfect nature and perfect essence. Understand? 086 definitely Gnostic, as God saw all that he created and it was good. Thank you. For God to act against his own nature is to demand God be the God of evil and chaos. Correct, Andrew. Very well stated. Very, very well stated. I'll say that again. For God to act against his own nature is to demand that God be the God of evil and chaos. Then he's Satan. Understand? Then God becomes Satan. This is where Luther stood, and this is where William of Ockham stood, right? So God is all-powerful, but God cannot act contrary to his own nature or revealed will, right? God doesn't make square circles. He has created logic. So Dr. Obvious says God commanded Abraham to sacrifice his own son Isaac. Human sacrifice is evil, but God stopped Abraham. Actually, when you speak to the rabbis, okay, the way that they read that text, the way that they understand that text, is that God didn't tell him to sacrifice his son. God told Abraham to prepare his son. He didn't tell him, go sacrifice him. He said, prepare. That's all. He didn't say, do it. He said, simply prepared. Go through the preparations. So God will not, okay, so God Can God bring an unrepentant sinner to heaven? We do not believe so. Christians do not believe this, right? God's mercy and grace are available to all, but we have to choose to accept God's free gift of salvation through faith in Jesus Christ. We have to do the work of making the choice, right? We have to humble ourselves, submit ourselves. We have to show some repentance. That's the Christian belief, right? So God does not force himself upon anyone against their will. Each person must make their own choice to follow Christ or reject him, right? Yeah, so yeah, guys, I'm supposed to say YouTubey stuff like, please like, brush your teeth at least twice a day, once in the morning, once at night, and subscribe, all right? And remember to floss after meals. So yeah, please do like, share, and subscribe, and all that YouTubey stuff, right? So God wants no one perishes, right? But he respects our free will. So we do not believe God would produce an effect that contradicts his commands or bypasses the conditions that he has already established. Now, yeah, okay, I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I'll just stick to basic sort of orthodox theology, right? So God's sovereignty is purposeful and rational. We do not believe that God is arbitrary or capricious, right? So God permits physical and moral evil. Sure, he does. But he does not directly or indirectly cause evil. He permits it. He gives you free will. He gives you license to act, right? God does not command anyone to do evil, right? And I see I made a typo there. Okay, so for instance, if God says, I want you to torture a baby, right? According to Occam, according to divine command theory, according to Luther, and so on, right, with divine command theory, what that means is that when God tells you to torture a baby, that thing becomes good. That becomes a good, because God said so. That's divine command. Therefore, it is now good. And that's what divine command theory affirms. And we're going, no, that thing is evil. That is still evil. It is inconsistent with the character and nature of God. And goodness, right and wrong, flow from the nature and essence of God. Therefore, it is evil, and God does not author evil. So I'll leave it at that. Now, Revelation, Apocalypse 21, 22 to 27 verses Occam. So let's look at St. John. I think this is St. John Chrysostom. Nothing stained by sin will enter heaven. I have my issues with St. John Chrysostom anyway, because, yeah. So he writes here. Now, this is purely for the sake of me discussing early church fathers. And I saw no temple in the city, for its temple is the Lord God the Almighty and the Lamb. And the city has no need of sun or moon to shine upon it, for the glory of God is its light, and its lamp is the Lamb. By its light shall the nations walk, and the kings of earth shall bring their glory into it. And its gates shall never be shut by day, and there shall be no night there. They shall bring it into the glory and the honor of the nations. But nothing unclean shall enter it. The reason I say this is that I'm going to be peppering from this point forward. I'll be adding quotes from early church fathers to show you what the early church fathers, the earliest Christians, the original Christian church, what they wrote, what they said, what the earliest Christians in history, from the earliest writings we have, what they said. Nothing unclean shall enter it, nor anyone who practices abomination or falsehood, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. As also says, I hope I don't see Lloyd in a couple of months doing pauses in the stream to sell toothpaste at good discount prices. Yeah. So with Occam, there is no longer a morality that's rooted in the perfection of a common human nature. Because according to Occam, as a nominalist, there is no longer a common human nature. There's only particular individuals who make up their own mind. Right. So now, Occam claims he was not a moral relativist in the sense of believing that individuals are free to design their own subjective moral codes, right? But he was a proponent of divine command theory. So to him, moral principles would derive from the authoritative commands of God. But if you are a particular and there's nothing that's universal, see, this is incoherent. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how they square this particular circle. But if everything you do is purely subjective with inside of your own mind, how do you know you're interpreting this correctly? But fine. So now moral imperatives and these commandments, moral commandments, are not tied to human nature or purposes that God has for humanity, right? So he says these are just arbitrary commands. God could have commanded us to engage in actions like adultery. God could have ordered it. right? The fact that he commanded otherwise is just a happy accident. God just decided, well, I'll do adultery in Earth 2, and on Earth 1 we'll have no adultery. Just let's see how that works out, right? And he says no, that God decided one thing and not another is not an inherent necessity, right? It's just an expression of God's decision on the day. God made a random decision, and it's nothing that is inherently a necessity based on God's character, right? There is nothing that's objectively based in human nature or an objective moral order. Do you see the problem here, right? So we can toothpaste and smart. Just wait till someone approaches me with a sponsorship with toothpaste. Winston, that's fantastic. Allah has fixed the very portion of adultery man must indulge in, and there's no escape from it. Let me just bring that in. Just close the window. That's brilliant. Yeah. Allah has fixed the very portion of adultery man must indulge in, and there's no escape from it. So that tells us there is a nominalist God there, divine command theory. Do you see? Luther and Occam and Calvin, there's a little bit too much Islam going on in their Christianity. And personally, I like no Islam in my Christianity. Yeah, many Catholics are very poorly catechized. It's a real problem. Okay, so let me continue. So, one effect of his nominalism is that the ethics and morality of God can take on a new character, right? Moral commands no longer resemble God's fatherly wisdom. It's just the will of God. God said, go torture babies now, and I'll give you 5 cents. Okay, God said, don't torture babies because I don't know why, right? So, God then isn't our father who raises up according to perfect morality. Anything God says is perfect morality. So this is what Muslims believe about Allah, all right? So, yeah. Now, moral teachings, including natural law, right, resemble arbitrary decrees of a sovereign God, right? Decrees to be kept under penalty of final damnation. Do what I tell you, damn it. That's what God's saying, okay? And decrees that could have been totally different if God had wished. In other words, morality is whatever God decides. So he could have said, don't brush your teeth for a week, since we're talking about toothpaste now, or do. And then next week, wear your underpants backwards. I mean, like, seriously, that makes no sense. Do you understand? This is what we're left with. So with Occam, the question of moral teaching becomes cut off from the question of man's final obey me or else. Thank you, Andrew Martin. Very well stated. So this is why so many moral and ethical systems in modernity, beginning with Kant, are deontological. Okay? They separate the is of human nature from the ought of human nature. There is no substrate of morality grounded in the essence and the character and the nature of God. Right? So we'll discuss that at length. I'm going to get into in the future, I'll get into the Enlightenment, and we'll talk about Kant and others. And we're going to see how nonsense their philosophies are. So over time, moral relativism will creep in. Right? If people can make up their own personal notion of fulfillment as individuals cut off from any common nature, if we have no common nature, then that leads to relativism. Right? If they're informed in if there's no human nature that is placed into us as part of the nature of God, if we're not built in the image of God, right, then you can make up your own set of evolving moral norms to suit you, right? So, besides, okay, people also get tired of obeying commands that seem arbitrary, right? Okay, sorry, I made a typo there. Okay, sorry about that. Let me just fix what the heck did I... what did I do? Good grief. Yeah, sorry. Sometimes I get lost in my stuff. Okay, yeah. Okay, when you're writing like 100 slides, it can get confusing. Okay, and I've done like 300 slides this week. So, where was I? So for Occam, the words we use to describe the world are arbitrary. Typos are free, guys. Just so you know, typos are all free, okay? Yeah, so, but seriously, I wrote something like 50, 60 slides today. So yeah, if I don't have typos, it would be a miracle. Yeah, our brains are on autocorrect. Let me tell you, autocorrect hates me. Um, so for Occam, all the words that we use are just arbitrary, right? They tell us nothing about the real world. right? They're just names for things. Oh, by the way, there's something very important that someone said that I need to go to. There's a fantastic comment that someone made, and I need to find it. So let me go to my channel. And let me bring this up because this is worth sharing with you. So this is where we currently are. So Steve Deutsch, let me just close that. Right. Steve Deutsch, right, wrote this under the comment. He said, "This is my last monotheism, my last episode on nominalism." He wrote, "This one blew my mind. They drew a wizard circle around you, inside of which they tell you that nomenclature, or words or names, are irrelevant. Meanwhile, they understand perfectly well how important words are. Then they rename everything according to how they want to create the illusion around you. The way to break the spell is first to recognize that it is occurring, to recognize how small the wizard circle actually is, and to step outside of that circle of false words, false nomenclature, by using Thomistic philosophy and scholarship. Look up the new discourses with James Lindsay for more information on how leftists use language to beguile, to how they cast spells on you, aka the wizard circle." And that's true. James Lindsay talks about this at length. This is modern witchcraft. This is modern sorcery. It's modern spellcraft. This is modern spellcraft. This is work. James Lindsay's work. Look at the negation of the real. Okay, James Lindsay. If you're going to watch one, I'd say in the negation, take your time. Take a week if you have to. Over several, watch it in pieces. The negation of the real. That is fantastic. It's well worth watching. Okay, James Lindsay's work. But thanks, Steve Deutsch. This is a brilliant comment. But it is spellcasting. Okay, word magic. And don't forget, Islam has a thing called letter magic. Right? They've got a practice called letter magic. Right? Okay, so now the kind of methodological doubt that Descartes had in his philosophy, right, where we start totally uncertain. There's this complete uncertainty. We just don't know. We start blank. No, you don't start blank, right? This radical skepticism, where you have to doubt everything, question everything, deconstruct everything, start fresh with the owner, blah, blah, blah. This goes back to Occam. So this has infected everything. Lloyd is his font set to 5,000. Yeah, I try to make the fonts large enough to read on a cell phone. I mean, yeah, so, yeah, so, yeah, don't forget, these are all assaults on Thomism. It's assaults on logic. Okay, now Luther and Occam. So the German reformer spoke of the English Franciscan as, without doubt, the leader and most ingenious of the schoolmen, right? He called him his dear teacher and declared himself to be of Occam's party. That's Philip Schaff, history of the Christian Church. I've already discussed that. Okay, volume 6, chapter 3, leaders of Catholic thought. So Luther, he's the main figure in the Reformation. He's in fact the first Protestant, right? He held nominalist tendencies, right? We see this, how he rejects scholasticism, and also in the main philosophical framework of the time called realism, right? So he rejects realism, right? So realism, abstract concepts or universals, such as the concept of goodness. I will define the terms concepts, the term abstract and universals again later. I'll keep repeating this, but we'll talk further about abstracts versus concepts, what they are and what they mean for us theologically, right? So, such as the concept of goodness or redness, right? We believe that these terms have a real existence independent of particular instances. You don't just randomly have a bunch of apples that are red or a bunch of Ferraris that are red. There's a certain redness we've applied into the real world. We've applied this concept of redness to the real world, to these physical instances in the world, right? Luther disputed this and argued for the primacy of particular instances. There's just a bunch of randomly red cars. How they got to be red, it's just your mind seeing red, right? In his theological works, Luther emphasized, think of this. Imagine you had red as something that existed independently, right? As a metaphysical concept. So we have this metaphysical concept. We recognize this external reality. We see it. We interact with it, right? It informs us. And we take this red and we make 10 cars red. From this nominalist point of view, you cannot interact with the outside world. The outside world is not real. There's only the subjective inner world. There's only what's inside your mind, what's inside your skin, right? So when you see something that's red, you just happen to apply the idea of red to it. It is purely that this is your impression, this is your interpretation of the impression that you're receiving from an outside world. And if 1,000 or 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 other people also happen to see Ferrari red, well, that's just an accident somehow. How that works, because there's nothing that's shared, there's nothing universal about these. You just happened to choose that these Ferraris all happen to be Ferrari red. You just randomly apply them into a category, into a box called Ferrari red cars. That's just, you could have put an apple in there, you could have put a banana in there, you could have stuck this in there, because that's also red. That's also a red Ferrari. You just made random choices. We all know how stupid that is, right? So, in his theological works, Luther emphasized focus on the individual's relationship with God through faith. Now, as he defines faith, right? Rather than relying on external structures or institutions. So we get rid of history, we get rid of authority, we get rid of the church. There's only your feelings. Now we're back to the original sola fifis. My feelings are more important than your feelings. I have better feelings than you. My feelings are more correct than yours. Right, so this emphasis on individual experience, this Gnostic experience, in other words, right, and personal relationship. I have a personal relationship with Jesus. Jesus is talking to me, and Jesus says that I can have 10 girlfriends at the same time, and I should go rob a bank because I could use the money. You understand? I have a personal relationship. Jesus is talking to me in my ear, and this is an extension of nominalist thinking, where the particular, right, the individual, the subjective, takes precedence over the universal, or the objective. So, Occam is accused of heresy by Pope John the 22nd. He flees to Munich, which is in Germany, and there's a guy called Luther who's also later on in Germany, and he offers his services to the Holy Roman Emperor there, or whatever it was, whoever the guy was. I can't remember his name. It's in the notes somewhere. It's here. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, it's here in the notes. I have it here. He offers his Louis IV. Okay? So, and he offers his services as a polemicist, as someone who's going to write to serve the state. So he bends the knee to the state. He now offers his services as a polemicist against the church for the state, right? And now the simple thing is that right and wrong exist objectively, based on God's unchanging moral character, not based on any subjective experience or subjective idea of will, right? Because if God changes his mind, then there is no objective morality. If God can make up his mind and change, hey, babies, you can torture babies today. That's all good because God said so. Then God has no unchanging nature. Then morality does not exist. You have no firm morality. And yes, obedience to the state over morality, exactly. And Martin Luther did the same thing that Occam did. It was about obedience to the state. We'll cover that in my Martin Luther talks. So what is the implication when subjective relativist nominalism is applied to the Bible and Christian doctrine? So over the next section, I'm going to be talking about science and nominalism, how the science and theology, how this affects both science and theology, so reason plus faith. So this is from the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, William of Ockham, and it says here, I'm just highlighting one section. In metaphysics, Occam champions nominalism, the view that universal essences, such as humanity, or whiteness, or redness, or dogness, are nothing more than concepts in the mind. And he develops his own philosophy, admitting only individual substances and qualities. Okay, so now, of course, Kevin was on the show. Now, because of Kevin's comments, Kevin's non-trad Cath. Now, if you're a non-traditional Catholic, you are, according to canon law, not a Catholic. You're not in the Catholic Church. Go stand in the corner, face the wall, wear a dunce cap. Now, because of things that Kevin brought, I had to add a few more slides to this. I've actually added more slides now after his next appearance, and he added some more nonsense. I've now updated that to discuss some of the things he was saying and to clarify those things. So, of course, Kevin said that he rejects abstracts, but he accepts universals, which is an incoherent position. But anyway, of course, he's smarter than William of Ockham, because William of Ockham, rejected both. So anyway, Ockham. So this is Philip Schaff, right? The history of the Christian Church according to Eusebius and Philip Schaff, right? So this is the complete 8-volume edition of the Schaff's Church History and Eusebius' History of the Early Christianity. Let's have a look. Following Duns Scotus, Occam taught determinism determinism is the very same philosophy that was taught by a guy called John Calvin, right? Now, don't forget, atheists also teach determinism. They teach materialistic determinism, right? It's like atoms, billiard balls, like you throw one billiard ball against others, and they all move according to mechanical physical laws. They move according to standard physical laws, right? And so you have no control. Literally, you're just a meat puppet moving according to physical laws, collisions of atoms, things sloshing around, right? Now, theological determinism is effectively the same thing. It's functionally the same. You are positing a different cause, but functionally it's the same. God is running a remote control, and you have no control over anything. So Occam teaches determinism, the same as Calvin, right? And if you are teaching Calvinism, then that's not Catholic. Right? So God's absolute will makes things what they are. Christ might have become wood or stone. In fact, Jesus could have become a donkey or a flea or a rat, right? God could have become a goldfish. Jesus could have become a goldfish if God had decided. So we could have been saved by a goldfish or a potted plant, maybe an alligator. You see, God could have chosen anything, really, right? So, and he says, in the department of morals, what is now bad might have been good if God had so willed it. So an imperial office is derived immediately from God. So with you having a high status, if with you as a royal, right, your authority is derived from God. And if you decide, I need to go kill those peasants, well, God willed it because you derived your position from God. Now, this is, oddly enough, is also the Catholic position, but let's just say they apply it slightly differently. There's a little bit of a difference here, right? So truths such as the Trinity and the Incarnation cannot be deduced by argument. So there's no way to logically prove the Trinity. You cannot prove it from logic. You cannot prove it from reason. You cannot prove it from your mind. You have to feel it, you see? So that means non-Trinitarians can't prove to you, and you can't prove to non-Trinitarians, and tritheists who believe in three gods, not one God, not a trinity of, one God, different persons. How do you convince these people if you can only say, well, my feelings are just, can you feel my feelings? Can you feel my feelings and how my feelings convince you that I'm right? Yeah, because they got strong feelings too. Do you understand the absurdity of this position? This is supposed to be a genius. This man's an idiot. A plurality of gods may be proven by reason, as well as the existence of the one God. So, in other words, yeah, you can prove that there's a trinity of gods. That's three separate gods. You can prove that there's one God alone, like the monad. And he also says popes and church councils may make mistakes. Now, of course, if the early church councils made mistakes, then maybe you've got the wrong theology. Maybe you've got the wrong morality. Maybe you've got the wrong beliefs. Maybe you believe the wrong things about Jesus. Maybe the Bible is the wrong canon, because all of these things came through the decision-making by church councils. Church councils were reacting to heresies, they were reacting to challenges, and they defined these things based on their understanding of Scripture, based on a lot of detailed work that went in. And he's saying, well, maybe they were all wrong. Now, if he goes, well, I think all the Christians before me for the last 1300 years, they'd all just made mistakes. I think I'll fix, in fact, you know what I'm going to fix Christianity. I'm going to make something called Lloydianity. I'm going to make Lloydianity, and I'm going to throw in a little bit of Marxism, and I'm going to throw in a little bit of Madame Blavatskyism, and I'm going to throw some Lutheranism in, and then I'm going to use some AI to think up some smart ideas, and I'm going to fix, because all these councils can make mistakes. So I'm going to fix the mistakes. I'm going to use mathematics as well, science, physics. I'm going to fix it. And that's exactly what every heretic has done. This man was a heretic. This man was insane. So the Bible alone, he says, is inerrant. Martin Luther said that, and he gets that. So Martin Luther gets that from William of Ockham. Which Bible? If the councils decided on the wrong canon and the wrong Bible, then which Bible? Which books? How do you know? How can you trust the canon that you have? Are you going to make up your own canon? Right? Do we do that now? Right? So, which canon of the Bible? And how do you interpret that? How do you interpret that Bible? How do you decide what something means? And if you cannot prove theological truths through reason and logic, how do you convince people with your feelings? Do you understand the utter idiocy of this man's position? I mean, am I exaggerating? Am I unreasonable Do you think I'm wrong? Or does this make sense? Does this show that this is the position of a retarded, wet, old, dilapidated cabbage? This is the level of intellect that this man possesses. So, and he says here, a Christian cannot be held to believe anything that's not in the scriptures. Show me the word Trinity in the scriptures. Show me the word. It's not there, so you can't believe that nonsense. Trinity is not in the scriptures. The word's not there. I won't believe it if it's not in the Bible. So the word Trinity is not in the Bible, so I guess we don't believe in the Trinity now, right, Occam? Does this make sense, guys? Am I making sense? I mean, am I logically applying these ideas and then showing these are ridiculous ideas, these are absurd ideas, and these are heretical ideas? So he says Christians may exist independently of the Roman Church, right? So what he's saying is Christians may exist independently of the church. In other words, you can go do your own thing. Run along, make up your own thing, go do your own thing, and be all good. All right? So, and then he says, right, and everyone would be the Pope's slave, right? And he says, in the doctrine now, the papacy is not a necessary institution. Now, if you don't have a pope, if there's nowhere where the buck stops, if there's no one to make a final decision, everybody becomes pope. It's chaos. Everybody becomes pope. Everyone makes up their own mind. Everyone invents their own church. Everyone makes up their own theology. And then you have the chaos that you have today. Since I'm making sense, the EU will want to lock you up in an institution. That's not good news. So all they're doing is they're sowing chaos. This is all they're doing. All the nonsense words aside, it is simply introducing chaos. So in the doctrine of the Eucharist, Occam represents the traditional view as less probable than the view that Christ's body is at the side of the bread. So understand the reigning view for like 1300 years up to the time of Occam was that Jesus says, this is my body, this is my blood, transubstantiation. Occam says, no, it's next to, and that's the view Luther took. So now Luther got his idea from Occam. So it's next to, you see? So it's next to. So, okay. Which is, Jesus said, next to the bread is my body, and next to the blood. So remember to drink the cup next to the blood cup, and remember to eat that piece of bread next to the other one. They're kind of next to, or just if it's on the table and it's next to, but you ate only the bread, then I guess you didn't eat the body, which means that Jesus's body is still next to the bread on the table and you didn't have any. Does that make any sense? Do you understand where logically this goes? So, yes, these are heretics. They're second-guessing the church here. They're second-guessing theology, historical Christianity. So this is Luther's theory of consubstantiation. Now, apparently, Occam accepted the church's view because it was less intelligible and because the power of God is unlimited. So in other words, divine command theory. Well, God can do stupid things too. God can command something even if it's dumb. Thanks, Occam. So Occam's views on the authority of the civil power of papal errancy and the infallibility of the scriptures and the Eucharist are often compared with the views of Luther. Right, let's continue. Luther, as late medieval theologian, his positive and negative use of nominalism and realism. So Luther learned theology within the context of nominalism and realism. He engaged especially principles from nominalist teachers, adapting and transforming, making up his own nonsense, in other words. So he learned some wacky ideas and he added his own wacky ideas, and now you've got another wacky idea. Instead of one church, one set of doctrine, one set of beliefs that have been throughout history, this is historical Christianity. Now you've got thousands of stupid ideas. So yeah, so guys, hopefully I'm making sense. Hopefully this is not like far-fetched nonsense that I'm throwing at you. So now concepts exist, but only in the mind, only in your mind for that matter. You see, it's only something that's valid in your mind. He was trained to be a lawyer, exactly, and in fact, so was Calvin. I mean, they're all, by default, they all kind of did law degrees when they were doing, back in the Middle Ages. So they all had legal training and became sophists. Yeah. So William of Ockham was also a theological voluntarist, and he was a reductionist. So he was a voluntarist and a reductionist. He believed that if God had wanted to, he could have become incarnate as a donkey, or an ox, or a goldfish, or a broom, or a hen, right? Or even as both a donkey and a man at the same time. So God could have been a donkey and a man at the same time. So in other words, when Jesus entered Jerusalem on the donkey, they could have both been Jesus. So, hello, little man. I hope you look good after the haircut. So understand this already. Now you're looking at what's the whole idea when so now you've got two gods, two Jesuses, Jesus the donkey and Jesus the maybe Jesus was also a fly that was sitting on the ear of the donkey. Who knows? That's according to Occam. That's all good. That's good theology. Do you understand how stupid that is? I'm sure you're happy. Yep, I had a haircut a couple of days ago. So yeah. So God could be willful, God could be arbitrary, and God could also be unreasonable. So this is contrasted with intellectualism, right? Christians believe God's actions are guided by reason and logic, right? There's coherence. So the historical Christian view, right? Others question the coherence and theological implications of Occam. Right. Now, voluntarism is any metaphysical or psychological system that assigns to the will a more predominant role than that attributed to the intellect. So in other words, feelings, narcissism, I want that, I said that, do it, damn it, obey me, right? That is voluntarism. Or equivalently, the doctrine that will is the basic factor, both in the universe and in human conduct. So God does things by decree. God demands. He's a petulant child. So Occam says universals are the products of abstraction from individuals by the human mind. So if you see a bunch of 10 red Ferraris, it's not that there's redness and not that you're recognizing red. You've seen something and you've come up on your own randomly with this idea of redness as an abstraction from the cars that you're seeing. You've seen cars. You actually only just saw cars. But you decided these cars were red and you abstracted the idea of redness purely by yourself. And, and this idea of redness has no existence outside of your mind. That's what we're left with. So he denied the real existence of metaphysical universals and he advocated the reduction of ontology. In other words, the reduction of our understanding of reality, meaning actually the reduction of the meaning and our understanding of theology, because he applied Occam's razor to theology. In other words, we need to simplify to the point that we get rid of logic, right? Hence Occam's razor, which he applied to theology, to destroy universals. Don't forget, God is good. Good is a universal, right? Don't torture babies. That's a universal. According to Occam, that doesn't exist anymore. He goes into conflict with the Pope, and he's a proto-Protestant. Right. Occam also held that the councils of the church were fallible, meaning that Christian foundations are unreliable. And this also foreshadows Luther's sola scriptura standard. Now, Christians will say, some at least Protestants will tell me that the Catholic view is nominalistic. Not true. So there were some Catholic theologians in the Middle Ages who had nominalistic views, such as Occam, Durandus, and Gabriel Biel. Their views on the value of good works in justification were not sanctioned by the church. They were not adopted. They were not endorsed. Nor was this the majority view of theologians. Right? So nominalist philosophy has been denounced before councils, condemned in the person of John Abelard and Roscelin and others. Right? The Catholic Church does not concern itself with nominalism as a philosophy. However, the Catholic Church does make statements on its theological implications. Now, seeing its theological implications, we can see that this is not even Christian. This leads to nihilism. This leads to relativism. In fact, functionally, it's often not any different from atheism, from modern atheism. So, an aspect where their views deviated significantly was the understanding of the value of good works in justification. Right? This is where they differed. These Catholic theologians differed from the church. In Catholic teaching, justification is the process by which an individual is made righteous in the eyes of God. This involves two things. There's God's grace, and there's the human response to that grace through both faith and through good works. Right? That's the view. Now, Martin Luther gets rid of your contribution, and it's all up to God. You do nothing. You're just a lazy slob. So good works, the Catholic Church teaches, are the fruit of faith. This is considered important in the process of justification as they are understood to cooperate with God's grace. Now, of course, I constantly keep hearing, well, the Catholic Church is pagan. Of course, I'm not sure what's pagan about this, but fine. Now, these nominalistic theologians downplayed the role of good works in justification. They emphasized the absolute sovereignty of God. the divine command theory, the Muslim theory, in other words, Islam, right? And they put emphasis on God's unmerited grace. Do nothing, sit back, relax, have a beer, get drunk, torture some babies, and God will get you at the end. He's going to go, yep, come along, and well done. Yeah, you couldn't do anything at all. You didn't have to try at all. Just be lazy, do sinful things, and yeah, I'm going to let you into heaven because you're my boy. That's it. That was their philosophy. Right. So, Catholic condemnation and orthodoxy. So, Roscelin is known for his theological tritheism. Yeah, these are good Catholics. They believed in three gods. There's no Trinity, there's three separate gods. Abelard's own doctrine was a modified nominalism, right? And Roscelin is often credited with instituting the theory of words. So this particular theologian, creates this theory of words. They were both condemned by the church for their views, although not explicitly for nominalism. Ariel, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Thank you. I really appreciate the donation. Thank you. Right, so Roscelin was condemned at a council in Soissons, right, in about 1092, for his interpretation of the Trinity. He was accused of tritheism. Abelard was condemned in 1141 for his views on the Trinity, which were heretical, right? Occam was just as crazy, right? So now understand that within the Protestant movement, right, if one of your scholars, if some crazy person went off the rails, right, your denomination of 12 people could condemn him, but there's no universal way that you can apply anything, right? There's no way you can apply anything, right? So because there's no universal ways, you've got the Pope, the buck stops there. The Pope says, look, that's outside of the line of tradition. No, we're not having that. Understand? So that covers the whole church. Whereas when you've got chaos, it's like, well, his opinion is as good as anyone else's opinion. Have I covered Igor Shafarevich? I have not covered Igor Shafarevich. Let me just go here. But I have here Atheism, the Socialist Myth, Igor Shafarevich, and Nihilism, and the Socialist Phenomenon by Igor Shafarevich. I've actually got two presentations that I need to finish on Igor Shafarevich, just so you know, century since. Right, so, okay, now Abelard's application of nominalist views to the doctrine of the Trinity implied that there's one God, which is an abstract concept, and God is not a real thing. God is just an abstract concept. It's just in your brain, right? In his book, Theologia, and his attitude did not seem to allow for mystery in the Trinity or an incarnation. That is not even remotely Christian. That is not remotely Christian. So nominalism has an effect on Christian dogma, a negative, an absolutely corrosive, destructive, negative effect on Christian dogma. So in the Catholic understanding, good works are important in the process of justification, right? They are seen as the fruit of faith. They are understood to cooperate with God's grace. Good works is said to contribute to growth in grace and deepen communion. That's also a very Aristotelian view. We get better at things as we practice them. So that's Aristotelian ethics. You practice the things and you get better at being good. Catholics affirm the meritorious character of good works. And of course, Calvin says, maybe God's decided you've been made to go to hell anyway, so it doesn't matter what you do, right? So there's a reward in heaven that is promised to good works within the Catholic view. However, Catholics do not contest the character of good works as gifts, or deny that justification is always the unmerited gift of grace, right? So the Catholic Church maintains that good works are always the fruit of grace and the interior transformation of the justified person. And the Church teaches that eternal life is both grace and the reward given by God for good works and merits. I wanted to get that statement from the Catholic Church so you understood that's the Catholic view, and that has been the standard view of historical Christians for centuries up until the 1500s when Martin Luther came along and messed it all up. So, Calvin's version of God. Let me try and get through 3 slides on Calvin. Nominalism has a deeply negative impact on Christian theology and faith. Hopefully I've made that clear, right? So by denying the existence of universal truths, nominalism harms our understanding of God's perfect and unchanging nature. Hopefully I've made that plain now. So by dismissing metaphysical realities, we lose sight of eternal spiritual truths. They don't exist anymore. Nominalism has led people to perceive God as a distant being who arbitrarily decides what is good and evil, without a foundation for universal moral principles. And there's no reward. You can do good, and God will say, I designed you to go to hell, so off you go, buddy. Too bad, right? And there is no absolute standard for determining right and wrong, divine command theory. However, we know that God embodies absolute truth, goodness, and order. So these people have butchered the image of God. Welcome, Conociendo el Islam. So these people have literally butchered the image of God. And his moral laws, as we know, are not subject to human trends or cultural shifts. But of course, we'll cover that as we go. So Luther's nominalism steered Christianity towards moral relativism. Nothing is considered absolutely right or absolutely wrong. So by denying the existence of universal moral principles, nominalism undermines morals. So it tells us that morals are subjective. It's purely what you decide inside your skin, inside your brain, right? And of course, this crisis allows secularists and materialistic ideas to infiltrate the church. Functionally, they are not different from materialism. They're not different from atheism. How can you have a Christianity that is functionally identical to atheism? Just except instead of being clothed in materialistic or scientific language, it is clothed in theological language, but functionally identical. That makes no sense. So the difference between good and evil is blurred, allowing for a multitude of interpretations, and we must reject nominalism. We have to reject it. Hopefully I've given you reasons for explaining why. We must affirm objective moral standards. Right? So we must restore an understanding of God as the source of all order, all truth, and all righteousness. Right? Only then do we have a foundation for Christian theology. Nominalism threatens Christian belief. Right? We must defend objective truth and metaphysical reality. God is a metaphysical reality. Right? So nominalism emphasizes individual subjectivity, relativism, and this erodes scripture. It erodes our understanding, right, of what is moral, what is true, what is right. Right? We also need to have a shared understanding of objective truth. Nominalism denies universals, so we cannot have any shared understanding. So it's all purely subjective. My truth, your truth, his truth, their truth, right? Interpretations are fragmented. And then, of course, you just have personal biases, personal preferences, and willfulness, right? It's will. So if there are no universal truths, no universal essences, then the sacrificial act of Christ becomes reduced to a mere subjective experience. If nothing is universal, then Jesus did not die for everybody. So in Calvinism, there's a belief in the concept of limited atonement, or what's called particular redemption. Why is it called particular redemption? Remember, the particulars are the individual items. Remember, dogs are just individual items with nothing in common between them. No shared DNA. That would be a myth. That's complete illusion. Now, limited atonement is also called particular redemption because Calvin did not believe that Jesus' death on the cross, his resurrection, was universal. It didn't bring universal salvation. Do you understand? We have another nominalist in the house. Predestination, an evil concept. Do you understand? It is predicated on nominalism as well. Limited atonement is also called particular redemption. There is no universal salvation. God did not die for everybody. Jesus did not die for everybody. So Jesus' death on the cross was intended only for the salvation of the elect. That's maybe you, maybe him. Me, not you guys. No, I'm special. I'm special. Jesus died for me, but not you guys. You guys are going to hell. And so only those who were predestined. This is in complete contradiction to the historical Christian doctrine of universal atonement. Jesus died for the sins of all of humanity. Does it make sense? Hopefully I'm clear here. Nominalism aligns with the false Calvinist doctrine of limited atonement. It is particular atonement, the chosen ones, exactly. But by denying universal truths, nominalism destroys universal salvation. There is no universal salvation for all mankind. So, right, so this means Christianity is no longer rooted in anything that is eternal, spiritual, and universal, right? So Jesus' power, his sacrifice is meaningless, right? That's the long and the short, okay? So let me see. So I'll just skip this slide, but you get that. You can read it later. But yeah, do you understand? That's the end of it. Now, what are abstracts and what are universals? An abstract, the Trinity is an abstract, right? Now, what's his face? Kevin non-tradcath, Kevin Heretic, was telling us that the Trinity, right? He rejects abstracts. He accepts universals, but that's okay. That's not. Then that's his own fake version of nominalism. Okay, so the Trinity is an abstract. Remember, he rejects abstract. He said, we reject abstracta. He said in the last episode, we reject abstracta. I accept universals. Well, then he rejects the Trinity. That's an abstract. The belief in God's triune nature, one God in three persons, right? The incarnation, the belief that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, became fully human while retaining his divinity, that's an abstract. Atonement is an abstract. The concept that Jesus' death on the cross reconciles humanity with God, providing forgiveness for sins. So he rejects abstracts, right? So this stuff goes out the window. Universals, salvation, the belief that faith, right, that through faith in Christ, humans can be saved from sin and find eternal life. Well, that's a universal concept. Well, for nominalists, except for Kevin does his own thing. Okay, whatever. That goes out the window. No universal salvation. Thank you, Mr. Calvin. There comes John Calvin. Resurrection, the belief in the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ, symbolizing victory over death. Well, that goes out the window. Faith and grace. Okay, original sin and eschatology, all of these universal concepts, all this stuff goes right out the window. So this guy rejects abstracts, he accepts universals. So if a nominalist were to reject abstract entities but accept universals, and this is Kevin again, there would indeed be a fundamental incoherence in their logic, right? Universals are a subset of abstract objects because abstracts are non-physical. These are metaphysical objects, right? These are non-mental entities that do not exist in any particular time or place, right? And it would contradict the core principle of nominalism to accept them. Right? So imagine a nominalist who says abstract entities such as numbers or properties do not exist. So Kevin rejected abstracts. The number one, the number two, and the number three is an abstract. So he rejected abstracta. So you reject numbers. So now you have to have science without numbers. You have to do maths without numbers, physics without numbers. Do you understand the incoherence we're really seeing here? So, now let's say he goes on that the property of redness that exists across different objects is real and universal. Now, this is inconsistent. Redness is an abstract property, right? That according to nominalism should not exist independently of the particular red things. But numbers or properties don't exist. But, okay. So a nominalist will argue that the concept of justice is just a label we attach to specific acts or specific decisions, and it is no objective basis for justice. They claim that justice varies from culture to culture. So there's no universal principles that govern justice. In the same discussion, they'll say that certain universal principles of fairness must be applied in legal systems. Like, for instance, so because he rejects abstracta, like justice, okay, he rejects an abstract. Justice is an abstract. So he says, well, we reject abstract. So there's no justice. There's just the individual decision you make at that moment regarding that thing. So now I say, okay, is torturing babies okay? And he says, hell no, torturing babies is not okay. You know, this must be universally applied. So now suddenly he's contradicting his position. Right? The abstracts define the universals. Thank you, Winston. Okay, so now they've got this universal principle of fairness, an abstract called fairness that must be applied in legal systems. You can't torture babies, right? So now you must apply this abstract rule universally. This is really, they're starting to contradict themselves. Okay, take care, Dr. Obvious. Yep. So the nominalist acceptance of the universal principle of fairness contradicts their rejection of abstract concepts like justice. So this universal principle of fairness contradicts the rejection of abstract concepts like justice, right? Because if you want to be fair, then you need to be consistent. And if the thing that you're being fair about is just an abstract and you reject that, then how can you apply it universally? So by acknowledging and advocating for universal principles, they affirm the existence of abstract and objective concepts like fairness that they are denying. This is inconsistent and tells you the incoherence of their position. So I'll stop here. Let me just continue to check where we are. 67. So yeah, this goes on to 86. So it looks like I have 19 more slides. Should I go on a couple more slides? What do you guys think? I can go off a couple more slides. Let me go maybe, I'm at 67, so maybe I should go for 3 more slides. Let me see. Just fix that. Yeah. Okay, so let me go to, let me do a couple more slides. Yeah. So guys, does all this make sense so far? Three more. Does it all make sense so far? I mean, does this seem logical to you? Does it seem rational to you? Right? Sally forth. Okay. Um, you know. So, right. Now, nominalism corrodes the idea of justice. It corrodes theology. It corrodes science as well. Let's have a quick look at that. To refute nominalism, the view that universal concepts are just names with no reality, with no corresponding reality, the name, the symbol, doesn't apply to a reality, right? And we want to demonstrate its limitations as an anti-scientific and illogical position, right? So we have to examine the foundational aspects of logic and science, as both disciplines are underpinned by the necessity of having universals and, of course, abstracts. Take care, Dr. Obvious. Yeah. So, one, universals are the foundation of logic. So the heart of Aristotelian logic, which is Western logic, is the principle of non-contradiction. Contradictory statements cannot both be true in the same sense and at the same time, right? So our understanding relies on the existence of stable, definable concepts, universals. So a word is a universal, right? A tree remains a tree, right? A tree is a particular, but the concept tree is a universal. And then we've got the category of trees that belong within that universal, but that term has to stay stable so that we can manipulate it and work with it and understand it and create a science around it. If the tree suddenly becomes any random thing, like this is now a tree, then, and maybe it's a real tree or maybe it's this thing, then you don't know what you're talking about. Then you get confusion, you get chaos. So without universals, right, the idea of contradiction becomes meaningless because there are no stable definitions to contradict. Now, nominalism rejects the existence of universals and it undermines this principle. So you get a collapse in logical discussion. You can't have a logical discussion, right? So they are denying logic and then they're going to use those same words and the same concepts and the same logic to convince you to accept their position. Because hypocrites. In scientific methodology, we must have universals, right? Science requires classification. It requires generalization and the formulation of laws. Right? Take care, Just Janice. So these activities presuppose the existence of universals. Scientific laws do not apply, right? Scientific laws apply not to singular, isolated instances, but to classes of objects or phenomena, right? Universal laws are universal, right? If, for instance, when you hold a ball and you drop it, right, then we expect this is universal. That's a universal. The law of gravity is a universal. Of course, they're going to tell us if I drop this, if I let go this, it's going to fall upwards one time. It's going to go left another time randomly. It's going to go off at some weird angle the next. And it's going to go at a different speed. It'll go at a different rate. It's going to go in a curve. Understand? We believe these laws are universal. They say, no, that's not true. Right? So these laws don't apply to single isolated events. They apply to classes of objects, classes of phenomena. The law of gravity applies to all objects with mass, regardless of the individual differences, regardless of the particulars. No matter what you apply, the law of gravity applies to everything. So denying the real existence of universals means that scientific generalization becomes impossible. Every instance, every individual unique instance has to be considered on its own merits. Everything has to be measured separately, radically unique. There's no commonalities. There's no law. There's no natural law, no universal law, no scientific law you can apply. It destroys us. That's why everyone has their own pronouns. Are you a Z? Are you a zer? Are you a them? Are you a thee? Are you a they? Are you a thou? What the heck? Do you understand? Everything is unique. You cannot apply a category to anything. They are destroying logical discourse. They're destroying science. They're destroying reason. It's an attack on logic. It is not a freedom that they're trying to express. It is an attack on what is logical. Yeah, nominalism seems to just obey. Yeah, okay? So this is gaslighting you. They are gaslighting you. That's the whole point. So this stance is antithetical to the very nature of scientific inquiry, which works to uncover general principles, right, underlying the diversity of phenomena. Understand? Hopefully this makes sense, right? So, and Yeah, let me, so tell you what, let me stop here. My voice is getting tired anyway. It's a little after 9 for me. So hopefully I've made sense. Hopefully that wasn't too, but we're going to cover science and theology. So we'll be stepping between how this kind of irrationality destroys both science and logic. And sorry, destroys science and theology, how it's incompatible with both science and theology. And we'll end with that. So yeah, any comments or last minute questions before I end? The broad way to hell, yeah. But hopefully this has been clear. Hopefully I've taken these ideas, right? I took some input from this Kevin non-trad cath guy, and I've applied his concepts, the things that he mentioned, to try to illustrate how insane these ideas actually are and how they would play out in the real world. Yeah, science relies on the universal of the universe. It relies on universal laws, gravity. We know that gravity is consistent, reliable. But of course, these guys are going, well, no, gravity works differently for me. Everything goes sideways to the left. Okay, sure it does. Yeah, guys, so you've got a house full of kids and cats. No worries. Um, so remarkable presentation as always. Thank you, Azul. Yep. So guys, thank you. Yeah, the thank you Lolo main. She has I'm just going to pin this. If you guys would like to get a hold of a copy of this presentation, it is pinned now as the pinned chat. All right. So yeah. So okay, guys. So that's it from me. I will probably be on tomorrow night. Although I've got something to do tomorrow evening, so I might be really tired. Yeah, this is why quantum mechanics makes its way into New Age woo. But this stuff is corrosive. It is subversive. It is always subversive. It causes chaos. The whole point is to cause chaos. It is to undermine the existing order. It creates chaos and it is subversive. It is always trying to infiltrate. It is constantly trying to infiltrate into schools, into universities, into theology, into law, into sports. It is everywhere, and we have to speak up about this. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. So guys, I will call it a night. Thank you all. It's been really good spending time with you. And yeah, goeienaand, Winston, verder. So thanks guys, take care. And I'll finish this one next time. I've got like 19 more slides. I'll get through those next time. And we'll finish this one. Undermine people so they lack anything solid. Yes, Andrew. Yep, taking away their foundations. And so they obey the crazy. Exactly. It's gaslighting. They are gaslighting you. That's all it is. Okay, hopefully that was good. Thank you. Con entiendo. Dragon, take care, everyone. Good night. Take care, horse. We'll see you next time.